Okay, this video is quotes from my book, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes. And we're going to be talking about the authors by the name of Neil Postman and Charles Weingartner. They wrote a very good book about education called Teaching is a Subversive Activity. And the reason I'm doing this one out of alphabetical order from the book is because a viewer just recently mentioned some quotes for them, and I remembered them. I'm like, oh yeah, I should do a quote from them. So when something's timely, I'll just do a quote from those authors. All right, so let's start out. They say, what is it that students do in a classroom? Mostly they are required to believe in authority. You know, the public schools, they come out of, the Prussian, German training people to be factory workers and to be infantry like soldiers, really to make them just total obedience, no thinking. Mostly they are required to believe in authority, or at least to pretend they do when they take a test. Mostly they are required to remember. They are almost never required to make observations, to formulate definitions, or to perform any intellectual operations that go beyond just repeating what someone else has said. Yeah, public schools are designed to make people stupid. Recall in the public school is considered the highest form of intellectual achievement, and that the collection of unrelated facts is the goal of education. Yeah, that's all they teach is basically high school, grade school, and even grad school is really just a memorization contest. Okay, Postman and Weingartner continue. Once you have learned how to ask questions, relevant and substantial questions, you have learned how to learn, and no one can keep you from learning whatever you want to know. The implications of this fact are staggering. The most important intellectual ability that man has yet to develop, the art and science of asking questions, is not taught in school. And I would say that is not an accident. I'm very interested in study skills. I spent a long time learning study skills. And I can tell you, I've never in my whole life met a single student that was taught study skills in grade school or in high school. Some colleges have classes, like I took one at Stanford called How to College, but it was really baby study skills. It wasn't really good study skills. They didn't teach us memorization techniques. They gave us some advice on time management and stuff like that, but it was really Mickey Mouse. Okay, so what I'm saying is really good study skills, they increase your academic IQ by about 30 points. It's like anybody would want that. That's like the most important thing that grade schools and high schools and colleges should teach, but they don't. Okay, let's continue with Postman and Weingartner quotes. The next one is, in the Socratic method, the teacher asks the question. In the inquiry method, the student asks the question. The inquiry method generates a bolder, more potent kind of intelligence. Okay, so where he's coming from, this reminds me also of John Taylor Gatto. John Taylor Gatto was considered, like the best teacher in the United States. He won all these teacher awards in New York, and he became quite famous. He wrote some excellent books on education. And he said that, yeah, sure, the teacher can guide students when the material is new, but the students, in order to really learn, they have to be engaged, and letting them study things that they're interested in, doing projects on things they're interested in, that really gets them to read and study and pursue information. And in so doing, they get good at teaching themselves stuff. All your life, you're going to have to self-educate yourself. Okay, so Postman and Weingartner continue. Let us remind you of the process that characterizes school environments. When students are restricted, solely and even vengefully, what they are restricted to is the process of memorizing, usually just partially and temporarily, somebody else's answers to somebody else's questions. Whatever is supposed to be learned will remain unlearnable if the student believes they can't learn it. And by the way, I've talked to tons and tons of students, doctors, etc., and almost no one can remember anything they learned from a public school in grade school or in high school. Virtually nothing, except they remember driver's ed because they had to use that ongoing. They remember how to type because they use that ongoing. But other than that, they've forgotten almost everything. It's designed to be forgotten. I would even add that I think mathematics make people stupid. People are like, oh, how could you say that? Math requires you to use your brain. The reason is you don't use it. Less than 1% of the population uses mathematics. I'm triple boarded high-tech doctor. I never use math. I don't ever use anything I didn't know by third grade. So it's a waste of time to have people learn all this mathematics when they could be learning history, about the ancient Greeks, about the ancient Romans, about the Bible, about starting your own business, about how to choose a wife, okay, how to buy a car, how to buy a house. Okay, those are all valuable things to know. Okay, Postman and Weingartner continues. Students will have a hard time learning if they don't have confidence they can learn something, if they think the material is irrelevant, if they feel threatened by the topic. Okay, then when's the best time to learn? The best time to learn anything is whenever it's immediately useful to us. Yeah, if you got to engage in the topic the next day, read the night before. That'll stick in your brain. That's a good way to learn. John Taylor Gatto would have the students go do projects, and like one student wanted to, learn about swimming pools because she was a swimmer. So he had her travel around to the best swimming pools in New York, and she wrote papers about that. Whatever you're interested in, that's good. Postman continues, and Weingartner. The body of custom, convention, and reputable standards exercise such an oppressive effect on creative minds that new developments in a field often originate from outside the area of respectable practice. Okay, it continues. To know something really... Yeah, by the way, outsiders very often are the ones who make discoveries in a field, because the insiders all just follow convention, and then they become so narrow-minded that they become a joke. Like I said, it's very easy for anybody, any of these healthcare folks, all you got to do is watch my videos, read my books. You can easily have a conversation with an internal medicine doctor or an internal medicine subspecialty doctor, and you will know more than they do about their field. I'm not joking. I've told you these stories before. I went to meet with the endocrine doctors, the best ones in the big city where I live, and not a single one had read the basic papers of diabetes that Dr. McDougall talks about, or gone beyond that to read Shellman or Brownlee or Taylor. None of them. They didn't know anything about their own disease. They knew all the drugs because that's how they make their money. Okay. In addition, I've had similar experiences in other fields in internal medicine. The neurologists don't know about leaky blood-brain barrier, etc. They don't know excitotoxins, stuff that would seem obvious and basic, but it's just not taught in their training, so they never learn it. Most doctors don't read on their own. You'd be surprised. Most doctors are functional illiterates. Okay, let's see, continuing with Postman and Weingartner. To know something really well, you need to be able to answer the key questions about it. Asking questions helps you to make sure that you have deep understanding. It is the average mind that accepts superficial explanations and leaves it at that. Okay, a new quote then by Postman and Weingartner. Here he's going to talk about how there was sort of the theory that George Orwell had that, total control of the populace would be exerted with force. His vision of the future was a boot stomping on a person, okay? And then there was Aldous Huxley vision of the future, that the people would become, an idiocracy basically, that they would just be stupefied with drugs and hedonism, short-term pleasures. And the funny thing is both Orwell and Huxley were right. These guys write these brilliant books to sort of warn the masses on how to improve the quality of their lives, and the masses ignore them. But then the rulers read their books and use it to impose control over the ignorant, illiterate populace. That's how it goes. Okay, so here's Postman and Weingartner's quote. Orwell feared a book ban. Orwell feared the truth would be concealed. Orwell feared that we would become a captive culture controlled by inflicting pain. Aldous Huxley feared we would have no reason to ban books because no one would want to read one. Aldous Huxley feared the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. Yeah, that's what happens on the internet. I call it information flooding. All the paleo, keto, carnivore, low carbs, and the high-fat phonies, and the Mediterranean diet promoters, they all pile so much BS information on the public that the public gives up. I've had my own smart friends tell me, we can't figure out nutrition. All we hear is endless contradictory information. How are we supposed to figure anything out? Okay, Aldous Huxley feared we would become a trivial culture. Yes, that has happened. Okay, so one last quote here. The basic function of education is to increase the survival prospects for the group. Yes, and you've been miseducated and feminized because they don't want you to continue. So anyways, that was Neil Postman and Charles Weingartner quotes from Teaching is a Subversive Activity.